I'm really delighted with this legislation.
Mr. Chairman, I call Darian Fenton.
Thank you to the Minister for that explanation, and I do want to acknowledge, or Labor wants to acknowledge, that this is a genuine attempt by the government to resolve what is a very long-standing and difficult problem. And the Minister and the Chair is right, actually, when he says that there are constituents out there who are waiting to see this resolved, and we've seen many of them. I've certainly seen a few in my time, even as a list MP. I've had people who are quite simply desperate come to talk to me to see what could be done to help them in that situation, and just some awful situations. And one that I wanted to relay is a woman, and I won't use her name, but she's fairly well known. She's authored a book because before, in her former life, she was a nun, and she went through quite a bad experience in the nunnery and left. And wrote a book about that experience and how that happened. But she became married, and then her daughter suffered a very debilitating, crippling illness, and she spent years trying to help her daughter recover from that, and in fact did in the end. But at the end of her marriage, suffered as a result of that. So she's been through the most incredible experiences in her life. She bought a home after she separated in Albany, which has turned out to be a leaky home. And what she said to me, Dari and I have been through so much, but I've never felt like committing suicide until I experienced this. And it's just the awful thing of living in a home that is leaky. We all know that water does the most damage. We know it brings fungi and disease, but it brings stress, and just having no speedy resolution or sense of being able to get it resolved. So I do acknowledge, as I said, the genuine attempt by the government to deal with this problem, and certainly we can look back, and we will no doubt during this debate about the causes of the leaky home problem, and that the former Labor government made some attempts to deal with it and actually tightened up some of the regulations around building, which is good to see. But you do drive around Auckland and some of those new estates, and you look at the buildings and they're cladding, Mediterranean style, and you think that's bound to be a leaky building. And I think that I had the experience actually of going to a building site the other day with the BCITO to talk to a builder who's actually got 5 apprenticeships, and the purpose of my visit was to talk to him about what's happening with building apprenticeships. And I'll talk about the skills gap a bit later if I get the chance, because there is a crisis, I think, as my colleague Phil Twyford has alluded to, and how are we going to get the builders to do this work, given we also have an enormous job to do in Christchurch. But they told me now that there's a standard when they build a house, they automatically add a standard, and I don't know the ins and outs of building or carpentry, but there is a standard now that they have to add a new bit. And part of the job of the apprenticeships was being able to explain what that was, how they do it, and demonstrate that they actually understand the importance of that. So that was very, very interesting. The other thing that was really good about that visit was it made me remember what a craft carpentry is and building is. What a wonderful craft it is. Now, this was an old home in Devonport, not a leaky home, but it was being significantly overhauled. And these guys are on 4-year apprenticeships. Quite amazing stuff they have to do. They have to do the planning, they have to do, the concrete, and they've got to be able to do steel roofs, but they've also got to be able to do very intricate woodwork, particularly in old-fashioned villas in Devonport. So what an amazing craft, and I think it's such a shame that, and I know there were some road builders and others who took advantage of the fact that our regulations were weakened. I know that that was a crime. That was an absolute crime, and I'd hate to think that had in any way put a blight on the occupation of being a builder, because the people I met the other day in Devonport were fantastic, and as I say, are going to be wonderful builders, and of course they will benefit from the work that's coming up with this. In fact, I was thinking I've got a bit of building at home to do, and I better get it done quickly, because I may not be able to get a builder fairly soon. I think it's important to understand, and the purpose of this bill is that it doesn't provide for a whole lot of details around the scheme or the criteria to be eligible for the contribution. That's all been thrashed out elsewhere. The legislation doesn't require that to be. So people listening to this debate may be looking for that detail, but it actually isn't in there. It's really about providing immunity, which the Minister has alluded to in reference to the SOPs of my colleague. Labor is supporting this bill, and I think during the debate, Mr Chair, during the debate we will bring up some of the concerns that we have, and I know the Minister will do his best to persuade us that we're wrong, and we're happy to listen to that. But we still believe that there are many affected home owners that are not going to be, or who will be excluded by this package, and that's a worry. That's a worry, and I think there will be people out there thinking that some resolution is coming, and that's not going to happen. There are still some unresolved issues around the details, and the skills deficit is an enormous concern. Now, I know it's not covered by the bill, but it is something, it's fine to deliver the money, and it's great that, there's been a progress, and I accept what the Minister says about the hardest job it's being, and in fact, if anyone could do it, Maurice Williamson could. And I want to record my respect for him, actually. He was on the same select committee as me last term, and I always found him, we differ on lots of things, but I always found him very, very competent and capable. And he's the kind of man that will just get on and negotiate, and I think he's... Well, he is still... no, and he'll say that. That's right, he freely admits it. But he says he's a social liberal. Okay, so, there are some things we do agree on, some things we agree on. But however, I think, what the Minister has said about it being the hardest job he's ever done, I can see that. I can see the amount of work that's had to go into this, and the enormous amount of detail and convincing and negotiation and work that's had to be done on it. But however, I'd hate to see all that work put aside if we could not find the people to do the work because of the skills deficit that we have. I would hate to see it happen, and I think that could completely derail it. Now, one of the groups of affected homeowners that I wanted to talk about who are excluded by the package are the owners who are not found eligible under the Act, owners whose homes are more than 10 years old. Now, how long has this leaky building problem been going on for? Long, early 90s. So that's a lot of people.
95.
Since 95. Okay, so there will be some people, Minister, that will be excluded. You agree with that? And that to those people will seem incredibly unfair. And there will be owners that can't raise their remaining sum, the other 50%, and that will be really difficult for them. And most of those people will be vulnerable and disadvantaged, the most disadvantaged, and that people that have put their lives on the line to get their new house and build their new house and put everything into it, and I've met a few of them. And in fact then there's of course those who are vulnerable now because of job loss. They once had two incomes, now they've got one, and so suddenly I think they're being described as the nouveau poor that we're seeing in places like the North Shore. For people that used to have two incomes, have got a big mortgage, have put an awful lot of effort into getting this lovely new house, only to have this awful tragedy, this awful situation occur. So I'm worried about them, and I'm worried that they're going to not find any relief in this. And there are, of course, health implications, not only the stress that goes with having to deal with a leaky home, but health implications of having to live, and some people just don't have a choice, do they? They're just going to have to stay in their homes. They're not going to have a choice to go anywhere else. So we are concerned about those. There are some issues around the financial package, which I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit more, and I think it's the SOPs that have been introduced. I think allow discussion for that, and it's good that the Minister has given a response early up front, but I'm sure Phil Twyford will have quite a lot to say about those and want to discuss those as well. But finally, as I said, I think the major concern for me is the issue about being able to get the work done. Now, being able to find the builders to do this work, particularly when we have such a huge amount of work to be done in Christchurch. And the building industry, I think there is a whole lot of big blame that can be lumped on former governments in the 1990s who ditched the apprenticeship scheme and did away with skills training. And I think that's what we're reaping now. And it's good we've got young people coming through, but what this builder said to me the other day is, and what the BCITO said to me is, they can't find builders, they cannot find builders that will take on apprenticeships. They can't find us, so the skills shortage is something that I'm concerned about, and we hope that all of the hope that this bill offers and all the work that's gone into it isn't wasted because of a skills shortage and the work not being able to be done.
Mr Chair.
The Honourable Minister Maurice Williamson.
Mr Chairman, I won't do this all the time, but I think